Let's get into our topic of today's webinar. I want to start with you, Nadia. Let's frame this conversation. Can you tell us why you think relationship building with stakeholders, governments, armed group, and other groups is important for humanitarian operations?
Thank you so much, Tyre, and I'm very happy to be here today on this topic. And I think it's interesting that we even ask this question, right? Humanitarian operations happen in a social context. And I think in a social context, it is kind of obvious that it is based on relationships, on interaction with people. And when I am asked, how do you do engagement, or why are relationships important, I often refer to how we engage on a private professional basis. Maybe not compare it with how we engage with friends, but how we engage with professional contacts. And I have a few guiding points that I feel like are also applicable to relationships with key stakeholders in a humanitarian setting, right? So contacts are valuable, treat them with respect, give them the time. You also do that with professional contacts, right? Check in from time to time, ask them how they are doing. And also don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't rely on one contact to fix all your problem. You also don't do that with professional contacts, right? You never know where people are going to move to. Someone who might be your junior at one point is 2 years later the head of a section somewhere. So also consider that with your key stakeholders. And then obviously, the broader and more inclusive your network is, the better, because you might want to change jobs, right? So you don't only engage with people from the same section working on the same topic. That also applies to your humanitarian contacts, right? You cannot only have relationships from one ethnicity, from one party to the conflict. It kind of seems obvious. And then also something, be forthcoming with your contacts. If a partner organization asks you for an introduction, if you can do that, do it, because it's gonna come back. You might be happy to be introduced to someone else in a bit as well. So these are kind of it might sound naive, but this is how I deal with professional and humanitarian relationships.
And then Nadia, so let's say we do all that and we do it in the right way, in the best possible way. Do we have evidence that all that will actually help us in our humanitarian operations? Does it actually help in humanitarian operations? Does it make our job easier or better?
I mean, the question is maybe, does it always work out? 100% no, right? It's not that straightforward. But do we have another option? I don't think so. I mean, how are we going to fix our problems if not with relationships? And then I think what really helps us, if we have these people, be it community leaders, be it other NGO colleagues, be it religious leaders who can do introductions for us to more complicated stakeholders. But it definitely is not a straight way forward. I think we will always face one step forward, 3 steps back, but there is really no other alternative to that, in my opinion.
Thank you, Nadia. Abdalmajid, I want to move to you. Tell me what you think about that. Why humanitarian relationship building are important or useful for humanitarian operations?
Thank you, Thad. In addition, what my colleague Nadia said here, I think she was talking how to maintain the relation with or building the relation, and here why it's important building the relation, because first of all, we are a humanitarian here. We are not friends at the beginning. We are not coming for personal issues. We are professionals. And there is certain objectives that we want to achieve from our operation. And without building a relation, it will be difficult and big challenge for us to achieve those objectives, especially if we are dealing with armed groups and state armed groups, and not specifically with governments, because with governments there is a protocol, there is agreement, and in a way, maybe sometimes they are obliged to help us to achieve our objectives. but with others, it's not the same scenario. So for us, why and how this building a relation help us? Of course, we need an access. We are doing all of that, first of all, to reach out to our victims, to achieve our objectives, our humanitarian objectives. So victims, access, security guarantees, working modalities, protection, detention, all those objectives could be achieved, I think, only in a good way, without a lot of compromising and respecting our red lines, only with building those relations with different interlocutors. So because of those building a relation, I think this can facilitate, I don't want to make it too rosy, this can facilitate and make it much easier for us to achieve our objectives, because the other party or the side, they have their intention and their objectives. So if you could build a good relation in this regard, I think we can go towards more achievement to our humanitarian objectives.
Thank you. Zelal, I want to move to you. Can you help us more about why is it important to build relationships or rebuild relationships, especially in a context when there is change in government or change in political order, maybe inside that context?
Thank you, Saqr. As Abdalmajid was saying, that building or maintaining the relationship or rebuilding the relationship with the new regime that will give us access to our humanitarian assistance. That's very important. I want to give you an example, actually. Sometimes building a relationship or keep or try to have a new relationship that might help the other part as well. I want to give you an example about what happened recently, that as you know, that Syria, it has a new authority, and the new authority, it has their own limitation of experience in Idlib. Now they have an experience all over Syria. So we build a relationship to explain to the other part that dealing with the old governorates, it's totally different from dealing with a limited location. And actually that helped the other let's say the other side, and helped us and that actually built a trust between us, that we were explaining to them that you can do, for example, the humanitarian assistance in a coastal area. It's totally different from Idlib. It's totally different in Aleppo. It's totally different in Damascus and rural Damascus, because of the group of population, because of the logistic, because for example, you are bringing the items for the operation from the port. You are not bringing them from a road. It's totally different for the custom clearance. So you are sharing your experience with the new authorities, and then you are building a trust with them. So that will help you and help them to, at the end of the day, to achieve your objective, which is to reach the humanitarian assistance to the beneficiaries. So it's very important to not only build a relationship like, hello, we are here and we are UNHCR doing 1, 2, 3. No, to share experience with the other part and to listen from them. And that will build the trust. And at the end of the day, you can reach to the objective of humanitarian assistance.
Thank you, Zelal. Abdalmajid, I want to come back to this one. Why is it important in drastic change in political order, on when there's a change in a regime? Why relationship building is important at that moment?
Thank you very much. Of course, there is a three situation: building, rebuilding, maintaining. I prefer, if the best scenario, if we are in the position of maintaining the relation. Like that, we are the winners in a way or another. Rebuilding, less degree, building, it's a big challenge for us. Of course, it's important. I will elaborate more on the example of our colleague, that Zelal, the scenario of Syria, that we had a relation, and we had a good relation with the current authority when they were in Idlib as HTS, as non-state armed group, or they were from the opposition. At that level of control of the country, okay, our operation was limited, our discussion and dialogue was limited to their control in that area. And more or less it was successful. Now they are ruling a country, and they are in charge of all the activities in this country. So for us, it's important to maintain this relation, because there is more challenges, and especially when there is a transition, you have a lot of challenges. The business is not as usual. So now, first of all, and we witnessed that, we had some sort, unfortunately, maybe some sectarian violence, violence with minorities, maybe some other Arab group from the opposition attacking the authorities. So we have more challenges. We have detention, we have protection issues. Because of all the new challenges and a new layer of challenges and more power for the authorities, who's still in between, in the transition from the mentality of non-state armed group to proper authority and will follow a democratic path in the country, it will take some time. So it's important to be in this period, because I think the added value of the presence of the humanitarian organization comes exactly now. It's not important after 2 years, maybe when they have stability and everything is business as usual, but it's important now, and we can see it on the ground. There is a conflict was in the coastal area, there is another one in the southern area, maybe in the east, there is daily challenges here and there. Because of that, our presence is important. And for us, we have to maintain this relation. It was built or rebuilt, or for the newcomers, the first time engaged with the current authority to build it. And for me, I will talk later about that. Maintaining the relation really make our life easier. And this is a lesson for us to take it in consideration when dealing with non-state armed groups, that you have them today as non-state armed group, but tomorrow they might be something different. So you have to prepare, and the nature of relation and the quality of relation with you, between you and them today, it will be fruitful when they are in power, and this is important, either positive or negative. Thank you, Tahir.
Thank you, Abdalmajid. Nadja, what's your take on this, especially relationship building importance when there's change in the regime or in power?
Yeah, no, I want to build on what Abdalmajid said. I think the problem is that we often only wake up if there is a regime change, and because we realize that we don't have the relationships, right? Relationship building doesn't become more important when there is a regime change, but the problems, if we don't have these relationships, become more obvious. And I think we need to be a little bit self-critical, right? Our work by definition happens in very volatile context. So why are we every time surprised if there is a regime change? Maybe like cases like Afghanistan and Syria, they are really big, or Sudan, and are somehow surprising. But I think for specialists in the country, they also saw these things coming. But we should expect that things that people or groups become more powerful or lose power in a very short time, right? And so I feel like this very reactive approach to relationship building we often take is very harmful for our work. And I would like to give an example of one of our DRC country offices. I'm not going to name the country because it doesn't really matter. But for a very long time, they were always speaking about reactive engagement with the non-state armed groups there. And I hated this terminology, because if we speak about reactive engagement, we are always going to be on the back foot. We are always going to be under time pressure, and we're not going to have the capacity and the time to make good deals, to have good outcomes of negotiations, right? So I worked a lot with this team, and they were really interested in this topic as well. And they're now speaking about proactive reactive engagement, which doesn't make me 100% happy, but it does make a lot more sense, in the sense that they're not going to start proactively the engagement because they're concerned about the different risks also coming from the authorities. And I think that's a very fair and important point. But at least they are now prepared. They know what these actors want. They know what our red lines are. They know who is responsible for the engagement. So if we are approached, they know what to do. So I think that's kind of like a middle ground where I can agree on as well.
Thank you for that. Abdalmajid, I want to come back to you. Can you help us to establish a connection between relationship building and better negotiation? How relationship building and negotiations are connected?
Thank you, sir. There is no connection. It's completely separate. No, I am joking, of course. It goes together. You know, better relation, better negotiation. I will talk about first, and depends on the culture. Like the Middle East or MENA culture here, 90% of things, it depends about the personal relation. So if you have a good term, good relation with the interlocutor, I think you will succeed more or less achieving your objectives. If you don't have, then you have a big challenge. So for us, building the relation is the basis and the most important thing, which then will guarantee success in your negotiation. Because if you have sort of a trust and there is a good relation, positive relation, working relation, even sometimes there is some challenges. I think, yeah, some demands from here and there, they are not happy with your approach or operation, but at least you have a relation. Some of the organizations, they don't have a relation. So you have a relation with ups and downs. This will improve your negotiation term and also will help you to respect your red lines, because this relation, the other will respect you and to try to protect you at the same time, and you will maintain your red lines in those negotiations. So the better relation you have, the better negotiation you have. And as I told you, depend about personal relations. Sometimes if they are not convinced about your objectives and about your operation, and it's against their objectives, but because of this relation, they might allow you to carry out your operation, even they were not happy with that because of building this relation. And as I said, and maybe I will link it with the previous point sometime. If you come now and to build a relation with the government in Syria, for example, when they are winners, you have a big challenges. Because, of course, they will understand now we are the winners, we are the authorities, you are coming to us now. But before, when we are vulnerable and when need, you neglected us. Maybe you were against us. And because of that, we have to keep in mind not to neglect any interlocutors. For us, we're humanitarian. I know they're working with different organizations, they work in different ways about engagement within a state group. But for us as a humanitarian, non-political, our focus and aim is the victims. And we have to keep this focus. So in order to reach the victims and to support those who are in need, we have to reach out to everyone on the ground, all the stakeholders, and to build a relation with them in order to ensure sort of success to our operation and humanitarian mandate. So yeah, for me, it goes together. If you have a better relationship, you have more success in your negotiation. Back to you, Thal.
Nadja, help us. Let's dig into this more. Do you see connection, and how do you see that connection between these two?
Yeah, I wanted to keep it very interesting and have like a contradiction to Abdalmajid, but I fully agree with what he said. So within DRC, we make the distinction between engagement, which I think we could also is a synonym for relationship building, and then the negotiation phase. And for us, if we train our frontline staff, the engagement phase is really any kind of interaction, talking to like nothing formal at all, with all key actors on the ground, whether they have like a lot of influence or aren't that powerful. I mean, we don't invest the same amount of time, but like generally we're saying you cannot ignore anyone. And this can be direct engagement or indirect engagement. Indirect engagement meaning that we use an intermediary, for example, someone from the community who kind of like passes messages along. Again, doesn't need to be something very formal. And we believe that if we have this engagement prior to a negotiation, it makes the likelihood that the negotiation is going to be successful a lot higher. And the negotiation really comes into play once we have a problem. And our rule on paper again is that we don't want to do negotiations without prior engagement. Now, in reality, that is not always possible, right? And sometimes we have to negotiate with an actor with whom we didn't have any engagement before. But we already know, even with actors with whom we have a relationship, negotiations are so challenging. And if we don't have this prior engagement or relationship, it just becomes even more challenging. And so just in order to make it easier for us, let's use the time when we don't have an existing problem yet to kind of like build these relationships.
Thank you for that. Zelal, I want to move to you. I see Abdalmajid and Nadja are very positive here and optimistic that relationship building helps negotiations, helps humanitarian operations. Can you help us here to think of any possible limitation or risks, or is there a dark side of relationship building? From your experience, what have you observed?
Yeah, I have observed few points that I want to share with everybody. Sometimes that the building the relationship, and there is a lot of limitation, like over familiarity, that will lead you to you will feel that there is later on that there is a blurring between the personal and professional boundaries. The second point I can talk about is the assumptions that will lead the other, for you and the other part, to misunderstanding and miscommunication. Third point is the conflict of interest. Close relationship may sometimes create a conflict of interest that affecting your decision, sometimes with the partners or with the authorities, etc. Will lead you again to the sometimes to the lack of diversity. That lack of diversity, you are relying on one part, and then you are not exploring more relationship that maybe you can depend on later on, and that will lead you to a possible risk. Actually, you will feel that you lost the objective. You lost the objective. You are not actually differentiate or prioritizing the organization interest or your let's say friendship interest, or you are not prioritizing the organization interest. A dependency that you feel that that will limit you from exploring more relationship with other and will limit your reach. And of course, that will lead to mismanagement of the conflict. The personal relationship can complicate conflict resolution, and etc. While from my experience, you have to be very clear when you actually doing a relationship with a partner or with the new authorities, etc., etc. And you have to maintain a professional. And you have to set a very clear objective that you maintain a professional, you focus on the objective rather than the personal feelings. Second, you can set a clear expectation that in your relationship, to prevent any misunderstanding and to ensure that both parties, they are aligned with the terms of engagement. Document the agreements between you and the other party. Sometimes if you are diving more, or you are actually stuck in some relationship, you can seek for legal advice to keep you a little bit apart from and consult with a legal professional. Of course, one of the good thing is, or recommendation is, to diversify your network, not relying on one network. You have to diversify your network. And this is from my experience that I can give to colleagues, that you have to keep professional. That's very important, to keep your objective clear, to prioritize the interest of the organization more than the personal feelings.
Yeah. Thank you so much. These are very practical risk mitigation, and I think you mentioned document the agreement, and I remember having that conversation with so many experts, and one theme came out is this idea of make sure to finish every meeting with some expectations check, which can take the form of, so we're finishing the meeting, I think we agreed on 1, 2, 3. This is how
you
we
wrap
see
up
it
in
from
the
our
minutes
side.
of the meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, and check if they have similar understanding.
Exactly.
Because we heard a lot of issues where we get into the meeting, we discuss for hours, we leave the meeting, us and them, we have very different understanding of the output of that meeting.
Yeah, documentation is very important, even if you have a very close colleague inside the operation, and you are having a meeting, and sometimes you are actually discussing a totally different thing. So it's very important to document every single meeting and send it back to review, to make sure that everyone understands or on the same page.
Yeah. Nadja and Abdalmajid, I will move back to you. You both were deployed in different contexts. You both had this role in your career where you pack yourself, get your passport, you fly in to work in engagement, relationship building, or negotiations for access or protection. I want to ask you, what's your practical guidebook? Like when you are going into this new context, especially if there is change maybe in power or government, what are your first practical steps? How do you actually build the relationship in a way that will help your negotiations later on? Maybe I start with you, Nadja.
Thank you so much. So first one, in an ideal case, I would hope to never rebuild a relationship, to maybe start building one, or maintain one. But again, that's like the ideal case, and we all know that in reality we often have to rebuild. So my kind of like basic steps to follow is like, first of all, if I don't have an existing relationship or the relationship is not good, I want to get introduced by a trusted intermediary. And again, I mentioned that before, that can be someone from the community, it can be another NGO, but let's not be too proud to ask for help, right? And if we can't find someone who wants to introduce us and speak positively on our behalf, maybe we need to go back to the draw book and look at like what are we doing wrong. And then the first meeting, let's not start with a long list of demands. I know sometimes there is a high pressure that we need an agreement, we need solutions, but like we need to build this relationship. If it's not there yet, like we cannot just like someone with whom we have no relationship or bad feelings, we cannot march in and just ask for things. That's just not realistic. And what else? And I think Zelal mentioned that the objective, right? I think that is a problem that many organizations have who have like an access and security department. Often these are the people who are leading the engagement or the negotiation, and they're not very familiar with the programmatic objectives. So often they are not the ones who can like confidently explain why we need something. And that is like incredibly important. Like, why do we need to collect data? Like the fact that we want to collect data is not convincing enough for our interlocutor. We need to be able to explain why this is beneficial for the population and maybe them. So I think it's very important that we kind of like start taking down these barriers between our access and security departments and program colleagues and work closer together. And then something that maybe contradicts a little bit what Zelal said is that I feel like we need to become a little bit more comfortable operating in a gray zone. So I do agree with like with documenting, but like more documenting internally. So what have we discussed, and kind of make sure that the other colleagues in our team who need to know about it are informed, so we can build on these things. But I think sometimes we're a little bit obsessed with written and formal agreements with our interlocutors. And that just very often, especially if these negotiations or engagement happen at a subnational level, these interlocutors don't have the power and the authority to put things in writing, although they might be willing to agree something on a verbal basis. Now that is shaky, right? And it's a little bit insecure, but if we really insist on something in writing, I think we put a blockage for ourselves. And I believe we need to, sometimes we're a little bit too risk averse, and I think operating in a gray zone is often the best that we get.
Abdalmajid, what's your wisdom here? What are your practical steps that you usually deploy to build, rebuild, or maintain relationship?
Thank you for Nadja. I think she did most of that for building the relation. Just I want to add a few points. First of all, I will go back to the documentation issue. The documentation issue is good when you are dealing with authorities, but with non-state armed groups, I think you will never even write any document in this regard. So for me, my wisdom documentation with non-state armed group, especially with remote communication, everything recorded in WhatsApp or Signal or something like that, Like even if we had sort of a disagreement, we go back, okay, check your chat, we agreed on that date, on that. So put it simple as that, not so more complicated, because you cannot write minutes of meeting and send it to the interlocutor, not to the group. So it's a way of documentation light and appropriate one. For me, when you are building a new relation, first of all, you have to do a proper assessment and background check about your interlocutors, the people that you are going to meet. Like that, you are better prepared. The other issue, you choose the right person from your team for engagement, because not all the people, they have the soft skills to engage and to build the trust with the different interlocutors. If we don't have any direct contact, as Nadja said, we choose either persons or organizations. For example, CCHN, they have a good relation with the Syrian National Army, for example. We use them to connect and to introduce us to the Syrian National Army. HD, Geneva Call, any other organization that they have a good relation, we use them also in addition to persons. We are clear about who we are and what we are what we are planning to do. Also, we have to be clear with them since the beginning. We don't start discussing technical issue and they don't know who we are, what is our mandate in general, what is our field of expertise. And Nadja said that, okay, you don't put a lot of demands. For me, building a relation, the first meeting, 2 meetings, if it was really not life-saving and urgent, I will avoid any demands, 0 demands. So for me, I am going to engage and build a relation at the beginning, chit-chat, drink tea, coffee, and all of that. This will break the ice, and then we can go ahead with others. So this is for building a relation. For me, I will give here my example of maintaining the relation, okay? Because I will give the example of Syria. For example, when it was HTS or a non-state armed group or opposition here, they were, of course, weaker than today. They didn't have an army, they didn't have the means, they didn't have, I don't know, the financial resources and all of that. Of course, when they take the power, they will change a little bit. Their demand will be higher and all of that. But for maintaining the relation, how? When I go now today, honestly, for me, I didn't feel any change. When I dealt with them in non-state armed group and today, of course, now the scope of operation and activities is bigger. But in terms of relation, no change, honestly, because this relation was built since 5 years and we are maintaining the relation. So for me, but when I go to deal with the new people, appointed ministers, or all of that, I use my previous contacts that, okay, I had a relation with Tahir, we're building that. He called the new minister, okay, Abdalmajid is my friend, please deal with him. And this immediately will open the door. Previous activities that we did in the past when they were a non-state armed group, also this will help us to maintain the relation and to improve it. Influencers, some there of the religious leaders, if we know that specific ideology, so we'll use them also to influence, okay, ICRC or other organization did those activities and engagement, and this is useful for us. We continue our activity and also the volume of those, so they can see our added value even in the current situation and the current context. Also explain our previous challenges. What if we didn't engage with them enough in the past? We explain our challenges. For example, here, maybe the previous regime were not allowing us to engage in those areas, for example. Otherwise, we were threatened to close our offices. So this is a challenge. So we explain, we clarify for them. So for us, we continue trust building, engagement with them, use the previous contacts and unlock trust. They are the seeds that you can plant now, so you can grow and blossom, and then you have fruits in the current situation. Thank you. Back to you, Thar.
Thanks, Abdalmajid. Zelal, I want to move to you on this concept of you're Syrian and you're working in your own context, and you definitely worked with mixed teams between Syrian colleagues and expats who come to Syria to work. Can you help us hear more on how organizations can leverage the team structure between local or national and expat or international? Yeah, I don't like all these terms, but like it is a reality. How can organizations leverage this mixed teams for their own advantage to build relationships for better negotiations?
Okay, thank you, Saer. I have a few points about this part, actually. One of them is the culture sensitivity, which is working in a mixed team that promotes culture sensitivity and awareness among the team member. You have to respect sometimes the environment, to share the values and the understanding with the international staff. So this is one of the point that the organization working on. Second, we can talk about the enhanced communication, the blend of the national and expertise or the international staff. Members can improve the communication within the organization itself by facilitating the exchange of ideas, language, culture, norms, facts, leading to a clearer understanding, etc. I can add another point, which is adaptability, which is mixed teams are generally more adaptable to change and better equipped to navigate cross-culture challenges, enable an organization to be more in line in responding. I can add another point, which is the diverse of the perspective. National employees and international can bring diverse culture, background, experience, and a different point of view that can share within each other. Also negotiation in an effectiveness way when negotiating with the external parties or the new authorities or the new partners. The diverse perspective and expert within mixed team between the international can provide a comprehensive understanding of the negotiation landscape, allowing the organization to develop strategic approach that consider various culture and preferences. Also, I can talk about the conflict resolution. The blend of the national, again, a national and international team and the expert team can aid in resolving conflict by offering different approach, different point of view, different experiences, addressing issues in a different angle. International and national staff, they are sharing more experience within each other, and they can find an ideal resolution to the conflict they are facing. So there is like four points that the organization they are working on to mix between the international and national staff. And the most important thing, in my opinion, is that the national staff, they are explaining very well to the international staff about the sensitivity of the culture. Especially in Syria, we have a diverse population and a different governorate. You can deal in this way or on that way. So it's very important to explain to the international staff about the sensitivity of the culture. Of course, the international staff, they can bring their own experience, etc. But this is how the main points of the leverage of mixed team, let's say.
You have worked with a lot of expats colleagues who fly to Syria to help and work, especially maybe after the change in the regime.
Yeah.
Can you, without of course all the details, but can you remember a mistake one of them did, by flying into Syria and not knowing enough and going there to engage, try to build relationship, and then you witnessed that, or you saw what happened throughout all your years of experience? Can you share with us one mistake?
Actually, recently we had an experience with some of the international colleagues. They came like very motivated that we need to do 1, 2, 3, and then suddenly they actually started to compare because that guy already read what we were doing with the old regime or the previous regime. So he started immediately to compare the new system with the old system, with the new authority. And it was a big mistake because he didn't understand the sensitivity. It's a revolution. You cannot compare the old system and saying that the old system was good and then we need to adopt it for the new system. I mean the humanitarian system. So it was one of the big conflict we had, and actually we tried to solve that problem, that try and avoid to not compare anything with the old system, be very neutral, and try to create a new approach with the new authority. Don't compare anything with the old system.
I like that, and I definitely seen this in many in my, and probably even guilty myself have done it. If you work in different contexts, then you come with this comparative ad that, oh, of course, wait a minute, in Myanmar, this is how it works out. Of course, it will work in Libya or in Yemen.
Exactly.
The last question on this, Zelal, is that there is this assumption that in many contexts, sometimes it's safer not to be from your own country. Like having other colleagues from another nationality might bring some immunity because, you know, if you are not the citizen of your own country, the authorities might have different power over you. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it has to be as a national or from the same country. It has its own positive things, that you can build a relationship easier. You know, especially in the Middle East, you know, the family, you know, the background, that will ease to build the relationship. But it has its own dark side as well. Especially, for example, in the old regime or the previous regime. They, as you said, the powerful of the authority can actually push you to do something because they are handling all the security outside the organization and they are powerful. So it's better to put like international staff to deal with the very sensitive and a high level position, to not actually because that's why we have international staff. They can come, do their assignment and leave, but you are, as a citizen, actually you will be stuck, and maybe you will be actually you will be chased by these authorities if you are not actually benefiting them from any assistance, or sometimes they ask you to help them to deploy someone, etc., etc. So it's better to have the international staff. And I can see in the opposite way, if I'm traveling to other country, of course I will protect the national staff because I know the sensitivity of the environment that we are working with, especially in an emergency situation and a conflict situation like Syria, Afghanistan, or other. You have to be very careful, and it's one of the good thing about the international staff, that they have to protect the national staff from not getting in a conflict with the authorities.
Thank you so much, Zelal, for all those insights. Nadja and Abdalmajid, I have a bonus question for you. Let's say now you flew into a context coming in, you want to build relationship, or you are going to a meeting to an authority, and you discover that the relationship is broken, the relationship is deeply compromised. Maybe another colleague did something wrong, there's deep mistrust. So basically there's no relationship, or worse, the relationship is really bad relationship, and you are facing that reality. What can you do to rebuild that? What are the one or two tips that you tried yourself and it actually worked and it helped colleagues if they found themselves in such a situation? Maybe I start with you, Abdalmajid, on this one.
Just to clarify, before the meeting, or you are going and you are in front of the interlocutor?
In the meeting, you discover it right in the meeting. No one briefed you, and you think Mr. Ahmad is there and he will host you and he will open his arms for you. But Mr. Ahmad hates your organization, hates all your colleagues because something went wrong in the past. What do you do?
I pray to God to help me. No, first of all, I will try to observe all his anger. I have to be a good listener. In such situation, when you have an angry interlocutor and unhappy with you, just listen. Try to observe all the anger. Normally, he will be heating up for a few minutes, 5-10 minutes. After he finish all of that, then he will calm down. Then you use it immediately. Because after that, he's vulnerable, so you can build it step by step. For me, first of all, don't blame your colleagues. Even they did a mistake, don't take it. Don't confess that, even if it was done. But observe, we'll see, we'll follow up in this regard. Maybe we can bring to mind to the table after you're observing all the heat, something positive, something you did, an activity which was positive and useful for him and for his community. Mention a name that he likes. Yani, okay, Tahir, I know you are a friend with Ahmed. I'm friend with Ahmed. You know, Ahmed told me that we can go that. So for me, try to work on the environment, to calm it down, and then you can start building again the relation.
Thank you so much, Abdalmajid. I think you really brought a very important part of negotiations, is the de-escalation, and then how much, if we are in an emotional state, how difficult it is to be rational, and how difficult it is to have a logical conversation. So how to absorb the emotions out of the person. Thank you for that. Nadja.
Yeah, like with Abdalmajid, it's a little bit boring. Like we are just saying exactly the same things. But so I'm just gonna add some things that he hasn't mentioned already. I think we like if you are in a situation like this, we often have the tendency to justify why something went wrong, right? And then we get really defensive. And I mean, it's not like anyone who has been in a situation like this, it's not nice to take the heat. But I think that's just the only thing we can do is just like take it. I think it's very important we don't throw our organization, our colleagues under the bus. That really is not helping. But we also, maybe we're not defending them at the moment. We just listen, and then I think we can also ask, like, is there something we can do to fix this, right? I mean, also careful, this might give the floor to a very unreasonable demand, so we also need to be careful about that. Yeah, but just take it and listen, and maybe even apologize if we actually did something wrong.
So take it all and absorb it, and let all this diffuse in a way before we get into the conversation, the real conversation. Okay. Thank you so much, three of you. We will stop the recording now and we will move to Q&A.